Hello, everybody. Welcome to Coop Radio, episode number 23 here, following the happenings of North Wilkesboro. And let's not waste any time. Let's start the show with this.
I realize that this is probably going to be a clip and people are going to say, wow, Jeff Gluck is an idiot. That happens every week anyway. I think a lot of people disagree with me. A lot of people will like it. And it's just my opinion. I just didn't do it for me. I think a lot of people liked it. A lot of people thought it was old school, classic NASCAR short track racing. Drivers were able to move all around. They had multiple lanes, multiple options, lots of traffic. You had a whole 175 lap battle where first could never get away from second. And you're like, man, this is really cool. Like people really like this, but I feel like a DARF saying this. I feel stupid for saying this. Like like I'm losing credibility as like someone that likes purity, but it just didn't do it for me. Like, sorry, like it wasn't entertaining. It's probably because number one, you had one driver lead 323 laps. He was never challenged. And let's be honest, half the field got taken out with that Alex Bowman, Tyler Reddick caution. It put a ton of guys a lap down, and you took some good cars out of it. Ultimately, you only had 6 cars on the lead lap, which again, I get it's old school, classic, whatever, and that's enough for a lot of people. I don't know. For me, I'm like, okay, is this a good race? I mean, to me, I just wasn't. I was just like, all right. I realized that this is probably going to be
That right there. Yes. I love how Jeff sits there and says, I'm probably going to lose credibility for this and blah, blah, blah. And he even feels stupid saying it. It's like, well, maybe if you feel stupid saying this and you feel like you're incorrect in believing this, well, maybe you're just incorrect. Um, it really was a good race this past weekend at North Wilkesboro for the Cup Series. It surprised me. I kind of had in my head that it was not going to be a very good race, mostly just due to the fact that, look, the short track racing within the Cup Series has not been very good at all. Um, Ever since this next gen cars came into existence. And really, I mean, besides maybe a Bristol race or two, the short track racing in general has been a bore. And to finally see something that has allowed multiple grooves, allowed somewhat of okay passing, and allowed close-ish racing to a degree, all things considered, I thought the racing was fine. I thought the racing was good. I didn't see an issue with anything that happened. Now, I understand that a casual viewer is going to sit there and say, hey, you know, only six odd cars or whatever were on the lead lap by the end of the thing, and you know, it was a 2-man race at the end, and it really wasn't that exciting. And like Jeff Gluck said, oh well, Joey led 300 some laps. Well, here's the thing that people need to realize and kind of remember: not every race can be Atlanta or Talladega or Daytona. You can't have cake all the time. It can't just be cake and ice cream all the time, where it is side by side, constantly changing positions every corner, guys getting big runs, and there's a new leader every couple corners, and there's 100 lead changes, and everyone's leading laps, and anybody can win. Anybody can win. When you have conditioned yourself to believe that that is what good racing is all the time, and that's the only thing that we can put out there as like our quote best product, that's not exactly conducive or healthy in any way, shape, or form to be able to create good racing across an entire 36 race schedule. Because again, you can't have cake and ice cream all the time. It can't always be Talladega, Daytona, Atlanta drafting tracks where it's pack racing all the time. Because if that's all it is all the time, and that is all you are sold as good racing is and fun racing to watch is, well, then number one, if you were to say, for an example, that's all we watched, well, you're going to get bored of that too. You see the same thing over and over and over again. It's, diminishing returns. It's not going to be as special. It's not going to be as interesting. It's not going to be as fun. Number one. Number two, if that's what you sell as like the only thing that's good, well, then the other 30 some odd races, when we go to short tracks or regular mile and a halves or, 2-mile tracks or road courses, no one's going to, as a casual viewer, be very interested or be very invested. People aren't going to care about a Charlotte race or a Kansas race or a Vegas race or a Bristol race or a North Wilkesboro race or a Watkins Glen race or any other different type of racing that we offer. And this right here is a vital part of the sport as a whole. Short track racing as a whole helped build the sport up to what we see it as today. It is the building block that NASCAR was kind of founded on, was stock cars on a short track in the deep south. That's kind of like our building blocks here. And when we actually get something that is a decent enough short track race, if we're going to be honest, based off of the Gen 7 era, the next gen era, and you want to sit there and say, well, I didn't do anything for me. Well, it's like, how the fuck didn't it do anything for you? How are you going to sit there and shit on it? That doesn't make any sense. Just like he said, he's the quote purity guy and he wants to shit all over it. Well, I get it. You have warped your own belief into this, again, Atlanta and Daytona and Talladega are the only things that are really entertaining. He said last week, after the Atlanta race, it was the best race of the season. Yeah, was it a good race? Sure. Is Atlanta one of the best races to watch? Absolutely. But by the way, that's going to change. That track as a whole is going to change. The type of racing you're going to see there is going to change. Number one. Number two, again, it's this idea that it cannot be that all the time. That can't be the only selling point for what we have to offer, is one singular track and one type of racing. Short track racing as a whole has been on a real downslide with this next gen car. And for the first time in like a hot minute, I feel like we saw a good race. And the other thing too is the argumentative point of, well, a guy led 323 laps of the 450 lap race, and so it never really felt like there was anybody that can contend. Yeah, that's racing. That happens sometimes. It can't always be every single fucking person in the field is in contention for the win. Sometimes somebody shows up and is just the best, and they can't be beat. They have the fastest car by a good bit, and no one's close, and they run away with it. That happens all the time. It has happened in the entirety of this history of the sport. There have been people that have shown up to X race any particular weekend, and either it's a setup thing or just the car itself that they bring or whatever. They come to the track and they are just that much faster than everybody else, and it isn't even close. And they walk away with the win, dominating the whole race, and there's no one else that you even considered to challenge for the win because that guy was so fast. That happens sometimes. It happened 50 years ago, 40, 30, 20, 10 years ago. It happened. It's going to happen. It's happened in the last how many years? It happened this year. It will continue to happen and throughout the entire history of this sport until the end of this sport's timeline. It will continue where there will be races where somebody shows up and they're just the best. Denny Hamlin's had a lot of those this year where he's just been the best. He's just had the fastest car. And no one really was, even though something may have happened to him, well, we kind of know he's just going to slice and dice his way back up through the field. And then once he gets the lead, he walks away with it. SVG, same thing. Anytime we go to a road course, usually the expectation is he walks away with it. He leads, if not all the laps, most of the laps, and he has a 5 to 10 second lead over second place by the end of the thing, if not more. This shit happens all the time. Your job as a fan, really, is to find a way when that happens to look at the other spots on the track, look at second on back throughout the entire field, and enjoy the battles inside of the race within the race. That's your job as a fan. Your job as a viewer is not to just watch the leader. Because if that's what you do most of the time is just watch the leader, most of the time you're going to be pretty bored. A lot of the times the guy who's leading has a couple second lead on second place for most of the green flag run, and you're not going to be you're not going to be able to enjoy the race very much if you're just staring at the leader. So when the leader has a good lead on second place and there's no one that's challenging him right now, you look at what's happening in 10th, what's happening in 15th, what's happening in 20th. Where's the battle on the track right now that's interesting to watch? And you watch that. That's the job of the TV broadcaster to, when the leader has a good lead, go find a battle within the race to keep you entertained. And if you're there in person, that's your job as a viewer, is to find the battle on the track that's interesting. Who's side by side right now that's racing for position? Who's just next to each other in general that might something interesting happen? Just because somebody is dominating the race doesn't mean the race is bad. Doesn't mean the race is boring. It didn't do anything for you? Well, I don't know what to tell you, man, because by literal categorically, like NASCAR standards of what a good NASCAR race is, that is what it is. That is categorically a good NASCAR race. Well, all the field was lapped down. Yeah, so fucking what? That's happened forever. Just because it's not such a happenstance thing over the last 10 to 15 years doesn't mean that hasn't happened in the history of the sport. It's happened how many times? Even in the next gen era, that's happened before. And part of that was circumstantial stuff of like half the field getting trapped a lap down because of a caution. Well, you can't exactly predict that. And you can't exactly just give everybody a lap back because, oh, well, they're just all out of contention now. So that's not fun. So we're just going to let them all get the lap back. Well, that's not fair either. That's just racing at the end of the day. Stuff happens. This is the best short track racing we've seen in a while. And the idea too of, oh, should we even go back? Yeah. You can't. I saw a clip of Kyle Petty today where Steve Letarte asked him something to the degree of like, should we go back? And he was like, I don't know yet because we want to keep this thing special. What makes it special is that it doesn't happen very often. Dude, we don't have the luxury of like holding off on good short track racing. We don't have the luxury of like hiding away a short track and saving it for special occasions. Our short tracks right now are Richmond, Bristol, Martinsville, and NASCAR categorizes a bunch of other tracks as short tracks, but I don't. We only have a few on the schedule as it is. Number one. Number two, Martinsville has been a dumpster fire ever since the next gen car came into existence. Bristol has only been okay most of the time. and only had one or two races that were decently entertaining and decently good. Richmond's been okay at best again, and this was a very good race. This was a good race to me. And again, when you're living in an era and a time where good short track racing is at a premium, you can't exactly take a race that is wildly successful, looks like it's sold out, the atmosphere being amazing, the look, the old schoolness, everything from top to bottom, everything about that race was good. You can't exactly go, okay, now we're going to go put that on the back burner and we'll save that to do that again in a couple of years. Or like, save it for an all-star race again, or save it for the Clash, or save it for something else. Like, no. That's just now a points-paying race as it should be for the rest of the time. For the next X amount of years. Is it a perfect race? No. There's still things that you can work on. And again, unfortunately, I think most of that has to just do with the car itself. The next-gen car, again, as I've said before, and as everybody has said, is not exactly conducive for great short-track racing. But the fact that it took us 30 years to go back to a racetrack that was vital in the sport's history that we maybe should have never went away from, and we come back and the racing is good, and we want to like put that on the back burner, like what are you on? What drugs are you on? No, but we got to keep the San Diego race in there. Get rid of the fucking San Diego race and put Wilkesboro on the schedule. And while you're at it, find another stupid race track that you, for some reason, want to put on there for no reason. Take fucking Coda off and put Rockingham back on the schedule while you're at it. Because I know that would be a good race for the Cup cars. That would be a good race for the Cup cars to go back to Rockingham. But somebody would go out there and lead most of the laps because they just so happen, because they have the fastest car and they are the best at said track, and they have the speed there better than anybody else, and so it's not exactly fun. Well, I'm sorry, but that's just racing itself. Your idea of what good racing is, Jeff, is so out of whack if this, quote, didn't do it for you. You've lost the plot. You are judging this based off of something that is not the criteria of what makes a good NASCAR race, if you don't think that was entertaining. Because by the criteria of what makes a good NASCAR race, it met all the boxes. If not all the boxes, most of the boxes. All that to say, I enjoyed North Wilkesboro, especially a lot more than I thought I would. I definitely did not think that the racing would be as close as it was for most of it. And like I said, I mean, really the only reason why a lot of those guys were a lap down, half the field was a lap down, obviously, was the Tyler Reddick, Alex Bowman wreck that trapped everybody a lap down. But circumstances happen in a race, and random stuff like that happens during a pit cycle. You know? That stuff will happen. Doesn't happen very often. It's very rare, and that's why it's unexpected. So I enjoyed Wilkesboro. I thought it was a good race. I was extremely impressed by SVG. And I think I have to go ahead and say this now. It isn't even a question anymore that SVG is maybe I'm recency bias on this, but is he not the best export that has came to NASCAR in its history? I mean, the more recent exports that had decent success, you know, and by decent success, I mean like making it to the Cup Series and having a decent ride and winning races. The only two I can think of are like Juan Pablo Montoya and Marcus Ambrose, as far as the most recent ones. And maybe there's somebody from way back in the day, but what other export has came to the Cup Series, won, I think, 7 races now on road courses, a lot of them in very dominant fashion, and is finding legitimate speed on an oval? And not like Montoya found speed at Indianapolis. Like we're going to the Brickyard 400 this coming weekend. Montoya found speed at the Brickyard 400 because, again, his past running there, number one. Number two, it's, again, more conducive for maybe a road course guy. But, like, besides that one track, not a lot of oval success at all from Montoya. And even in the case of Montoya, like, not nearly as many wins, even on road courses. So you almost have to look at SVG, and maybe people would make the argument of like, well, it's, he's in a car that's very similar to the car he's raced for most of his career, and it's an unfair comparison because of that. But regardless, he's coming in a environment that he's not used to, which is oval racing, even more so short track oval racing. And he's not only finding legitimate speed, but enough legitimate speed to at least at a point be leading laps, like straight up. That's not something to ignore. That's not something to scoff at. If SVG were to ever win an oval, I'd say it would be a certainty that he's the best foreign export driver to ever come to NASCAR, period. And it wouldn't even be a question in my eyes. I think the argument isn't even there right now, but the argument would definitely be dead at the point if he were to win an oval. And listen, also at the same time, we make excuses for Connor Zilich and Ross Chastain for, they haven't had the speed at all to save their lives for this season on ovals or road courses or short tracks or, whatever type of racing. I take that back. Connor's had speed on road courses, but more so Ross Chastain hasn't had really the speed at any race very often. He'll have a flash of a top 10 or a top 5 once this year, but it really hasn't been there. And at the same time, we make excuses for those guys for not having the speed and saying, oh, Trackhouse is off, Trackhouse is slow, Trackhouse isn't very good right now, they're well behind and all this other stuff. And then there's SVG who's like just finding speed everywhere. So if he's able to find speed everywhere, he's finding speed not just at road courses, but now he's finding decent speed at ovals. What's the excuse anymore for those two? It really doesn't make those two look good. Now, Connor, I talked about a couple episodes ago, give him time. I think he just needs more seat time. But more so Ross Chastain, it makes Ross look very bad right now. Do I think Ross is washed? Do I think he should be fired? Do I think that he should be replaced by anybody? No. I'm not at that point yet. But it doesn't exactly make him look great when his teammate, who's supposed to be the road course guy, who's supposed to not be good on ovals, is outrunning him on ovals kind of consistently as of late. He's the guy right now inside the top 16 trying to make the chase. Ross isn't even in the top 20. So looking at it that way, like the SVG thing, like extremely impressive what he's been able to do in really a short period of time, and how quickly he's been able to pick up ovals. Because how many road course guys or how many F1 guys or how many IndyCar guys do you see come in and try NASCAR and try to figure out ovals and they can't figure it out and they're slow and no matter how many races and years they spend, they never really figure it out. And they're never really that good. They never find speed. And here's SVG who, only been here, what, a couple of years now? Only a couple years full time in Cup, I should say, even especially. And he's already kind of starting to get it. Not sitting here saying he's going to start competing with Christopher Bell and Chase Elliott and Larson consistently, but the fact that he's even just up there is a testament to how good he really is. I know that he had the funny clip on the radio basically saying, "All right, I'm leading. What the fuck do I do now?" Because it's not something that he's ever really done, is leading laps on an oval. But I think he'll start to figure it out here pretty quick once you do what you're supposed to do once you have the lead on an oval. It's kind of scary how quickly he's picking it up and how quickly he's starting to find speed. So good for SVG. And obviously, congrats to Joey. This is Joey's one win for the year. It's the thing that keeps him afloat in his job. I think that Joey's position now in the sport is just I don't want to say the tired old veteran, but that's really the best way in my head I can describe it. It's not to the level, I think, of like Brad, where it's like, hey, man, you ain't won a championship in a minute and you ain't been fast and even longer than that. Like, maybe you should hang it up. Maybe you should retire. And obviously he's not like Denny, who 40 some years old and still finding a way to be fast. He's in this weird spot where, okay, he's with one of the big three teams. He's won 3 championships in his career. Yes, all of them are Mickey Mouse championships. Absolutely. But even in those years during the playoff runs, there were some years where he was the best guy, where he was the fastest car, where he was the best driver for that year. The year that comes to my mind, I believe, is 2015, where he was one of the best guys that year. He was one of the fastest guys. He was winning races left and right, especially during that playoff run. So there have been years where he has been one of the best guys. I don't know. I don't think he's been the best, but he's been one of the best. And yes, a lot of those championships that he won, was he the best guy or was he even close to the best guy? No. The most recent one, I think, is the most egregious one. Him having like an average finish of 17th, for Christ's sake, on the season is pathetic when it comes to crowning that person a champion. But unfortunately, the record books will always say Joey Logano 3-time champion, regardless of whether they're legitimate or not. So when you're a 3-time champion, you've won, the X amount of races that he's won. I think he's going to be considered one of, I don't even think he is. I know he's considered one of the 75 best drivers in the sport's history. He's probably going to be a Hall of Famer. People will revere him as, living up to the expectations that were put on him when he first got into the sport and all this other stuff. But he's in this odd spot now where, okay, the playoffs are gone. The chase is now back. It's more reliant on consistency and racking up points than just getting random wins to get yourself through rounds. Now you have to be more consistent to win championships. I don't think it's exactly a recipe for him to win any more championships for the rest of his career. I think he's done winning championships. I don't think a fourth is on the horizon for Joey. But unfortunately, not for him, but for Team Penske fans or Penske as a whole, it's kind of hard to let him go because of his past success and the fact that even though it's not very often, and even though there's a very large gap, it seems, between him and Ryan Blaney now as far as talent wise, he still does get the oddball win like every year. And whether they are earned like this one, where he is actually the fastest and he does actually have the best car, or it's one of those things that kind of just fall into his lap because of either a smart strategy play or just things going the right way for him. It's things like this that keep giving validity to the idea that he's one of the best guys out there. Even though I think at this point, it's hard to even put him in my top 10 as the most talented guys out there right now. I mean, maybe even top 15. Like, I'd have to look at here. Let me pull up the point standings here and I can get a better idea. But, like, just pure talent-wise, take the driver out of the car and ask me, okay, who do I think is the most talented? I think Denny Hamlin's more talented. I think Ryan Blaney's more talented. I think the Kyle Larson's more talented. I think Christopher Bell is more talented. I mean, if I'm being honest, I think Reddick at this point is more talented than he is. I think Elliott is more talented. I think Briscoe is wildly talented and wildly underrated. I know that RFK has closed the gap to Penske, but I think Chris Buescher is more talented than he is now. There's 8. If you look down the list a little bit more, I mean, there's a couple more that you could consider. I think Eric Jones is wildly underrated as well. I think the Legacy Motor Club stuff has kind of held him back. Now, do I think he's obviously better than Joey? No, I think it's closer. It's more of an even. I think Byron's more talented than he is now. He's had better average finishes than Joey has. He's ran better than him. And I still think that, and people will say, well, he's because of the equipment that they're in. I think if you put him in exact even equipment, I think that a lot of these guys would outrun Joey. Straight up. And I'm not even counting Ty Gibbs, who's came on this year. I'm not counting Hocevar, who's came on this year. You know, I'm not counting some other people that I maybe could put ahead of him. But yeah, that's about 9 people that are better than Joey. And so that puts him in a spot of, listen, you won't win any more championships for the rest of your career, but you can't get rid of him. He has to just be a name within your group. And that's kind of what Brad was for a lot of years, I feel like, at Penske as well. Where, yes, the playoff system allowed him to make it to the Final Four, you know, every other year or whatever it was when he was still in the 2 car, but you never really took him seriously. You never really thought that he was a true championship contender. You kind of always just thought he was a guy that hung around long enough. and just, again, kind of gamed the system somewhat and just made it enough to get to the next round and get to the next round and be just okay enough to stay higher up in the point standings, but never really took him seriously. So, yeah, Joey's going to win the oddball race for probably the rest of his career. Probably every year. And this is the Joey Logano win for the season, probably. Mark that on your calendar now. That's over, and we'll look forward to it next year. But like, he's sitting. What I think I saw he was sitting right outside the top 16 in points. Yeah, he's 15th in points. He's just in. And up until like this weekend, he was outside the top 16 in points. And look, he's sitting right next to Austin Cindric, who, by the way, I've been on record, and I think a lot of people have been on record of saying, like, somebody else needs to be in that two car. Like, he's bad. He's just filling a seat and not contributing at all to that team, which is, again, supposed to be a big three team. So, again, Joey's on that level, but you can't get rid of him. How are you gonna fire the 3-time champion if he keeps winning and he keeps finding success relatively to your team? And if he's smart enough where he can game the system in the right way, who knows? Maybe he games the chase system and he figures it out here in the next couple of years, and all of a sudden he's in contention for a championship again. Do you take that chance that he won't figure it out? That's a good question. I don't know. I don't take that chance, though. Unfortunately, I don't. At least for another couple more years until maybe the drop off really happens and it's really bad, where the average finishes like 20th to 25th. Jimmy Johnson there at the end, that kind of stuff. Short show today. One last thing to end it. Todd Gilliland re-signed right before he made it to the final round of the in-season tournament. Did not see that coming. But he of course re-signed with Front Row Motorsports. I didn't think he was going to go anywhere. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's a 1-year deal. Because at least this is what I wish. I just wish it was laid out so then we actually knew. But it said through 2027. So I'm under the assumption that it's only a 1-year deal. And that he's back again just for, again, guaranteed next year. Him and Zane are right next to each other in points. This past weekend put him actually ahead of Zane in the point standings. They're like, I think 23rd, 24th. They're still right there next to each other in that same spot. And I'm still under the assumption that 4 car is going to be open for somebody else. And Noah Gragson will be gone. So you want to keep some stability, I guess, and not, shake up the roster too much. But that kind of is just Front Row Motorsports as a whole, is that spot. You're not ever going to assume that they're going to be running top 16, top 20 in the point standings. It's, if that happens, it's an outlier. And so, because of where Todd Gilliland is running, relatively to his teammate, again, you can't really justify getting rid of him, at least for the time being. And that's why I think it's the short-term deal of like, well, we can't justify getting rid of him and giving somebody else a shot because it might turn into what Noah Gregson's doing. So let's keep him around. Maybe there's another small improvement next year, and then we'll keep him around for another year and keep him on that leash. But I'm happy for Todd. The thing is like, it's just another field filler. So you can't exactly get too excited over it. Maybe they'll compete for a win next year. Maybe they'll figure something out. Zane Smith has been able to find speed at these random occasions. And maybe Todd can find it now too. He was pretty good at North Wilkesboro this past weekend. Again, part of that was the whole pit strategy thing, but it doesn't change the fact that he wasn't a lap down and he had a decent finish. So, for most of the time, I should say, he wasn't a lap down. And he still had a decent finish. And you got to be doing something right if you're making it to the finals of this in-season tournament thing and going up against Ryan Blaney now at Indianapolis this weekend, which is just, again, it's just very odd that he made it to the end. But, we saw it last year with how far Ty Dillon made it. Randomness of this in-season tournament is what makes it interesting. So, good for Todd. Like I said, it doesn't exactly move the needle, him staying. It's more of just like, hey, good for him. Kind of expected he wasn't going to go anywhere, and he gets to stay put. So, I'm going to wrap it here, actually. I know it's a shorter show, only 40-some minutes, but there really wasn't much news. As far as what I saw, I can relook again. But I am not wanting to do a very long show today. Long story short, I am taking a vacation starting in a couple of days. A nice long road trip to Boston. So I'm out of here, and I won't be around. And I won't even be home to watch the race. So I'll try to catch the race as much as I can for this weekend at Indianapolis. I don't want to miss the Brickyard 400, but, if I'm out and about doing stuff in, a place I've never been, enjoying the East Coast, then I'm going to try to do that. I'm not going to be cooping myself up inside. But I should be back sometime Monday of next week, which is usually when I record, but I don't know what state I'm going to be in mentally of like, am I going to be too tired? Am I just going to want to go to bed? Also, I talked about on last week's episode, like, hey, I've been thinking about moving it later in the week. So this might be the opportune time for me to move the show later into the week, like record Wednesday, upload Thursday, or record Thursday, upload Friday kind of thing. That still remains to be seen, but I wanted to wrap this up earlier because I still got a lot of stuff to do before I go on my little trip for 6 days. So I'm going to wrap here. With that said, I want to thank everybody for listening. Hope you all enjoyed this shorter episode here this week. Probably be back to somewhat of the same length as normal next week, obviously based off of news and so on and so forth. Maybe if I wait the extra couple days, there will really be a lot of news and it'll be a real long show to make up for the short one here this week. But not everybody wants to sit for an hour and a half and listen to somebody talk about NASCAR, especially when there's how many other podcasts already do that. Something a little bit smaller every now and then is not the worst thing on the planet. So 45 minutes, I think, by the end of this thing is, I think, plenty for this week. So thank you all again for listening. Hope you all enjoy. And I will see y'all sometime next week after I get back from Boston. So take it easy.